Before I start, I have a thing to inform you. I'd like to comment on BT Bolshevik tendency before our presentation. Regarding the BT's speech today, we welcome their point that the slogan "Stop the NATO war against Russia and China" is pacifist and opportunistic. That was our argument in early August. But BT has continued to fail to explain their contradiction between their positions in 2014 and 2022 in Ukraine, between neutrality and accusing neutrality as opportunism. We, Bolshevik Group, participated the last open letter for May Day, but do not participate in this call out for action on September. We explained the reason in the internal discussion of Marxist Speak Out, especially because of the second paragraph. There are a groundless and exaggerated view that sections of the US ruling class are also banking on the insane idea that in the event of full-scale war with Russia and China, the US can win a nuclear war. And an imaginary hope expressed in the sentence, "Stop these imperialist vampires destroying the planet," with an international outcry. In the background lies their own panic about war. The May joint statement had the spirit of the working class fighting against US-led NATO imperialism. But this joint statement contains a panic that war should be prevented at all costs. We assume that the phrase "world on fire" in the banner of joint action and the image of the earth burning under the flames of nuclear war are such expressions of fear that throughout the class consciousness. In the meantime, the main strike point has changed from US-led NATO imperialism in May to the war itself that must be protected even by outcry in September. The target of the spearhead shifted from the devil itself to the shadow of devil. The dramatic escalation of the Sino-US conflict served as the trigger for the war panic. On August 3rd, US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, which created a sense of crisis between China and the US, that a war would erupt at any moment. They growled as if anyone would open fire first, and the imperialist media amplified its appearance. Then the fear of war, which has been trapped in the Eastern Europe fringe, was released and spread out to North America and Western Europe, which have been safe zones. The panic that nuclear war must be prevented, whatever it costs, has been released. The paraphrase, "There was a madness trying to open the door by pushing through," pushing, though it can only be opened when the handle was turned. The joint action quaked by the panic. The cause of the war is imperialism, which is the highest stage of the capitalism. The violence of imperialism is not accidental. It's a law of itself. It is the nature of capitalism and imperialism to survive only when profits are maximized. Thus, the violence of imperialism is not as incomprehensible madness as that of serial killers. Judging their violence as something crazy is not based on the nature of the object itself. It was the panic of observer that made it looks that way. And the panic leads to the wrong path of bourgeois pacifism. At the end of the road is the advocacy of their country's imperialism. The nature of imperialist war is to make the working people of all parts of the world obedient subject to exploitation. That is the reason for the war. The main goal of US-led imperialism is to subdue a semi-colonial state Russia, which was repeatedly resisted imperialist hegemony, and a deformed worker state China, which is still based on vast state ownership, and to devour the huge industries and resources of the two nations. That is the only way for capitalism and imperialism to escape and rejuvenate from ruin. This is the essence of Ukrainian war and Sino-American conflict. Capitalism, which was on the brink of destruction during World War I and II, was able to revive with the cooperation of the imperialist minions within the working class. The task of Marxists in imperialist countries is not to discourage the ruling class from walking towards the war. We can't stop war by the outcry. Imperialists have always responded to the outcry, which is gripped by the war fear. We are also opposed to war. There will be no war soon. The Marxist mission is to firmly promote that the cause of the war is imperialism, that peace is impossible under the capitalism and imperialism, and that a socialist revolution that defeats imperialism at home and overthrows capitalism is the only way to end the war. This was the spirit of Zimmerwald left that built the leadership of the Russian Revolution. Now that the right chauvinist madness is escalating, this work could be a lonely road. However, as seen in the past history, the situation changes rapidly in certain period. From 1916 to 17 is an example of such a dramatic change. We are seeing such signs all over the world. The hegemony of imperialism is weakening, and incidents are accumulating one after another to raise the morale of workers in each country fighting against it. The 2014 Euromaidan coup was the latest success of imperialist regime change. Meanwhile, similar attempts have, have since been thwarted in Syria, Venezuela, Bolivia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. The United States failed to make a nosebleed of North Korea or Iran, which openly resisted imperialist hegemony, and they were awfully ousted after losing the war in Afghanistan. There was also a rare scene in which angry working class entered the Sri Lankan presidential palace without bleeding, where the imperialist servant stayed. Saudi Arabia and India, the traditional allies of the United States, are also openly reporting, reported to ignore US demands and make friendly faces to Russia and China. Strategic resources such as oil and gas are traded not only in dollar but also in ruble and yuan. These things that have happened in the last 10 years are rarely seen in the last 100 years. The world working class is carefully watching this strange scene and getting inspiration for liberation. This scene is not only seen by oppressed people. There are also pro-imperialist servants in many countries that are difficult to sustain for months without imperialist military support. They are terrified that they may easily be abandoned by their imperialist masters. Thus, is- this era is a general current of advantage for the global working class on the one hand, and general disadvantages for imperialism on the other hand. So, for the peace, the desperate wish of the working people, defeat imperialism, overthrow the first link of the imperialist slave chain, social democracy, social patriotism, bourgeois pacifism, and Anglo-American chauvinism. Build a revolutionary international party that will break the chains of slavery. Thank you, comrades.